I would get somebody in my life that's going to hold me accountable to live the life that God's created us to live. Get a mentor. Get somebody in your life that you can open up fully with, that understands you, that's going to show you things and that has no skin in the game. That's my wife and I talk a lot about when I started working with you and you started coaching me every week. And actually this come up probably a month ago, is what would our life look like today if I wouldn't have hired a mentor?
Hey, welcome to the View from the Top podcast. Welcome back. Aaron, Big A, you there?
Wally, what's up, buddy?
Hey, how's it going, man? Good to see you
Man,
again.
you've got to be exhausted right now. I mean, you put on a party of parties. I've never in my life seen so many people. The food was unbelievable. And why don't you share with everyone why you were throwing such a party?
Yeah, so my wife, Sonia, turned 50 a week ago, and we wanted to celebrate her in a very big way. So I have 3 grown daughters, a couple grandkids, but I got 3 grown daughters. And my wife has been a pseudo party planner for many, many years. She's done weddings for multiple people and obviously helped with the weddings of our daughters and just loves to put on parties. So we had a tall order in front of us. Could we pull off a party without her helping that she would appreciate?
Well, I want to tell you, man, you rolled out the red carpet. I mean, it was beautiful. You had your place fixed up nice and all the desserts. I wish you'd left those desserts off. Like you could have done me a favor and not even brought those desserts. But those desserts were off the chart. And that food, man, was incredible. So way to go, man. I think you outpunted your coverage. I think you did an amazing job.
Yeah, it was good, man. It was great to have all family in, and it was a long weekend. And
hey, what about that dance floor? Maybe we shouldn't talk about this, but you had a DJ out there, and I looked up, and you're doing this train thing around the patio, and all of a sudden, your newest son-in-law, was up there fast dancing, and I think I freaked him out when I got up and started dancing with him. He's like, "Come on, Big A, you're bringing it strong." Man, that was so fun, though. It was just such a fun time. Everybody felt so welcomed, and you just really did an outstanding job. Hey, let's move on. Let's talk about Bret Barnhart. Man, did he bring it strong or what yesterday?
He did, man. In our interview, man, it was fantastic. He, I know you're gonna dive into this in just a second, but man, I've had similar experiences in my life. The last couple of years, you know, Bret's gonna talk about like when you get to a certain point and you think it's what you want, and then you realize it's not really what you want. And I know you've been there probably as well, Big A, but it's been recent for me. So listening to Bret share this with us and go through this, I think it didn't open any wounds for me, but man, it was maybe too close to the vest a little bit, but it was great.
He was really telling a cool story about a life event that happened to him where his wife highlighted it. And then once it took place, he was like, that was pretty uneventful. Like that didn't do it for me like I thought it was going to do it for me. And he really shares about how there was a paradigm shift for him and how he had to really start exploring what he really wanted and the values and the purpose and the meaning behind it. And so, man, he's such a young guy to be so far down the tracks. I mean, I've never seen anybody at such early age at how he really has figured out in a really profound way what's important in life. And you guys hang on, man, stay to the end because he drops some value bombs all the way through this interview. I think you're going to enjoy it. So Kevin, what do you think? You think we need to get into it?
Let's get him in here.
All right, let's do it. Well, hey, Bret, welcome to View from the Top podcast, man. Hope you're having a great day today.
I am. Thanks for having me. I'm excited about this.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. You know, I started thinking back a little bit about mine and your history. I met you at Dave Ramsey's Entree Leadership Conference. You know, it's been almost a decade now. When I think about that, I'm like, man, time just zips by. And you're approaching 40 years old, and I thought, you know, I've been coaching Bret for a quarter of his life. I mean, it goes by just in a nanosecond. But man, the friendship that we built over the years has absolutely been amazing. You know, Brett lives in Tulsa, Oklahoma, just outside a little city called Glenpool. But the best part of Brett is his family. Man, he's got an incredible family. Crystal, Cole, and Addie. You know, another thing I thought about the other day when I was preparing for this interview, like I've been around since they were born. Since I've been able to witness them going to school and on trips and them coming here, me coming there. And they've even gotten to know Robin really well. They've even gotten to know my mom. And my mom got some cards from Addie and Cole the other day. She's been in the hospital. And so those kids wrote her some cards. And Brett told me they've been praying for my mom. And I'm like, man, that's the stuff family does. And when I started thinking about Brett, I thought, you know, really, you're more like a son that I never had. You know, I got two beautiful daughters and they're spectacular, but you've been really like a son that I didn't have. So I want to thank you for those relationships and what your family's meant to me. And we've interacted every single Tuesday now for 9 years. And when I started thinking about this podcast, I said, Kevin, we have got to have Brett on as a guest. I mean, we've done so much life together. And so, Brett, fill us in a little bit. Cover some of the things maybe I haven't about you, where you're at, how you got started, and let's have a great conversation today.
Yeah. Thanks for the introduction. So, been in business since 2002. My family has been in business doing construction since 1936. So it's a family thing. You know, growing up in the business, and I knew what I wanted to do, and we all started our own. So I've been doing that. I actually next month I will celebrate 20 years. So pretty excited about that. It's been a
Man, you're a
long,
young guy to be celebrating 20 years in business,
Congrats.
right?
yeah,
That's
yeah.
quite a feat within itself.
Yeah. Actually, I'll be celebrating 17 years with Crystal as well.
Wow.
So, long time there. Of course, Addie and Cole, you mentioned them. Cole's 10, Addie's 8. So yeah, it's exciting times. You know, life is busy, like you said, and a lot of things going on and all that. So, um, the kids also see you the same way. I hate to say it, but like your
Mm.
grandpa. Not saying you're old or anything, but
Careful
um,
now.
yeah. So Cole getting to come out and talk to you every week when we talk, and then even you bringing up all the times we talked, and I go back and look at progress and all the history that we have together, and how
Mhm.
much you know who I am and you know my family,
Mhm.
and you mean a lot to me and what you've done in my life.
Wow, man, I appreciate that. You know, who
Yeah.
would have known 10 years ago when I was there at Dave Ramsey's Entree Leadership as kind of a guest? Dave invited me to come just to kind of hang out. And you and Matt Miller, Matt lives in Stephenville, Texas, met each other, sat beside each other at Entree Leadership. And during the break, we had this VIP ticket that we were able to go out to this motor coach that Dave had brought in, and we hung out and we talked. And so between sessions, we would go out there, and I don't know if it was you or Matt said, hey, we need to get around this guy more and need to hire him as a coach. And then y'all approached me and said, hey, we want to hire you as our coach. I went to Dave's office between breaks and I said, Dave, there's a couple of guys out here at your event that wants to hire me to be their coach. And he started laughing, and I was afraid he was going to get upset. And he said, no, Big A, go for it. I know that's what you want to do, and so go for it. So you guys have been with us from the very beginning. Like, you're a founding member of Iron Sharpens Iron. My first client, you know, you and Matt were, and it's just been a spectacular run. But I want to talk about some things today that I feel like a lot of people out there would love to learn more about. And one of the things that you and I talked about a lot, you know, 9 years ago, was what you wanted. And you were struggling a little bit. You were like, man, I'm not sure. Like, I'm doing this thing, and it's generational, and our families have always done this type of work. And I'm not sure really what it is that I want. So take us back about 9 years ago and talk to me about the way you were feeling about business and life and the things that you wanted, the things that were important. Let's start there. What were some of the things that were important to you a decade ago?
A decade ago. So I'll go back to why I come to Nashville, why I went to Entree Leadership, because I think that's important. Started the business in 2002. I always said I wanted the biggest business in Oklahoma, construction business. Started chasing after that, hiring people. Um, it was a rough 8 years. So you were a part of that 8 years as well. So um, I was miserable, to be honest with you. Um, I didn't look forward to getting up every day. That was roughly 10 years ago. So I had been in business 10 years. I think, to be honest with you, I think going into business, I had expectations that you see all these businesses and you see business owners and you see successful people, and that once you get there and you're happy. And it's like, if I could just get there, I'll be satisfied.
Whereas there, that's where you were having a hard time identifying us. What is that? What is
That's
the
a moving
pentacle?
target, and you don't know
Right.
until you get there.
Right.
But I was
What was going
miserable.
through your head? Let's back up for a second. Like you said, I was miserable and I didn't like what was going on. What were some of the events that were taking place that were making you feel this being disenchanted?
Well, I was making money. So I can't say that I wasn't making money, and the business was starting to make money. I started, obviously, I started with $1,500 and just built it from that. So by that time, it was becoming successful. I was making money. Honestly, probably the most miserable thing was the anger I had towards team members, because I had expectations. I wasn't leading, and then they weren't getting led. So I ended up in frustration. So you helped me through that, because really I was the issue, but I was just looking at them and being frustrated with them.
Brett, I
Constant.
remember on many of those coaching calls, we get on the call and there was a lot of anxiety in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then you would almost boast about ripping their head off. I remember that terminology. You'd say, yeah, man, this guy came in and did this, and I just ripped his head off. And I listened for months, right? I was just learning who you were. What did you mean by that? And was that a sense of pride or ego, or what was behind that in that boastfulness about leading in that fashion?
I was proud of that. To be honest with you, I didn't have anybody leading me. I watched my dad in business, and I'm not saying I run my business like my dad, but my assumption was that I can I can run over everybody to be successful and get there a lot quicker, and nobody's going to get in my way. Kind of funny, I think back, I had high blood pressure in my 20s. I don't now. That's how much anger there was
Mhm.
in that time in my life, and there was a desire. I knew that this is not what success looked like. I knew this is not I couldn't live this way. I probably would have had a stroke by the time I was 40. So I went on a basically a discovery of, what do I do? Who do I know that's can teach me about leadership to find some type of happiness? Because it wasn't in the place I was in. That's where Dave Ramsey, that's where Entree Leadership, and even at Entree Leadership, I went all in for the full package, which is where we were hanging out in that coach, because I wanted a face to face with Dave of how has he done this and how has he built this business. Not knowing, I believe that God orchestrated everything that happened for me to be introduced to you because of what you've done in my life, because I probably wouldn't be the man today. I know I wouldn't be the man today if it wasn't for the things that you called out in my life and the path I was headed. So, um, I was just desiring something more. I think back to calling Crystal, and I never was mad or angry at her, but she had to hear about it, and it was constant because there was so much frustration and it was so much built up anger towards these people, and I had to deal with some personal stuff too that I think was driving that anger.
So they didn't have the determination, the perseverance. They didn't have, like Robin tells me all the time, I get frustrated at team members and she'd say, hey, like you eat, drink, and sleep this thing. You live it all the time. They don't think about it quite as much as you do. They don't behave exactly like you do. They don't run the business just exactly like you do. Robin would always tell me, if they did, it would be their business, right? It wouldn't be them working for you. What were some of those things outside of a huge business that you wanted? What did you think that it would take to make you happy, that you're not frustrated any longer?
Um, you know, I guess them just reading my mind
Mm.
and just being that rock star person that I wanted them to be. I think back a lot, and we really didn't talk about this when we were in discussions, but each individual on our team has their own personality. But I wanted their personality to be like my personality.
Mm.
And God didn't create us all the same. It's like we're the body of the Christ, and the if you hear something, then your eyes can see it, right? But if you don't have eyes, you can't see what you hear, right? So it takes every person to really build the body, right? And that's how I see people now. But I like they're like, I'm the eyes, and everybody needs to be just like me. And if you're not like me, then I don't like you, and you need to be who I am, not who you are. Instead of
So you
using
weren't
people's gifts.
embracing them. You weren't embracing their uniqueness and their personalities. And you've come full circle, though. Now you're even studying the Enneagram. You're learning about their disc profile. You're really involved in what it is that makes them tick. So now you've become a leader, not a dictator.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Well, all
so
the
help us understand that process and how you do it now versus the way you did it then.
So if you ask me about the positions in this business today, I would tell you every position that is in this business that I don't hold is honestly that where I'm not good at. So and looking at them differently, then like I didn't need them. I'm going to do it with or without them.
Mm.
My dad always said, "You didn't make me, and you're not going to break me." So it's kind of that saying, like, I don't need you. I'm just going to go, and you're either going to be with me or not. Take your pick. And really respecting who they are and using the gifts that I don't have that God instilled in them. Details. I'm not a highly detailed person. I don't want to live in the details, but you have to have detailed people in the business, right? Because you'll miss things. So respecting that, respecting who they are. Back then, I used the disc, and when I was going to have a hard conversation, I would go back and read about them and how to communicate with them. So when I went out to have that hard conversation, I was speaking to them how they want to be spoken to rather than how I would speak to them and how I would want you to speak to me, if that makes sense. So I think that's a big difference today. And then having those people in the business that carry that part of the business that honestly I don't do well at, and that's a tough place to get to as a business owner, to say, I'm not good at this.
Mm.
I'm not I'm not good. And then sometimes you need other people in your life to say, hey, you're not good at that. You need to be doing this in the business.
Mm.
So who are you going to have around you in your life to say, hey, man, to be honest with you, you shouldn't be in that role. And they do it in a loving way and they care for you and you respect that.
You've done such an amazing job in becoming more vulnerable and transparent over the past 10 years. You would have never in a million years, 10 years ago, said, I'm not good at something.
Yeah.
You would have buckled down and you would have shown a sense of pride in accomplishing that thing rather than living in your giftedness where God has really created you to lead and to cast vision, to encourage these folks well and get out of the details, right? I'm not a detailed person either. You and I share that, but we have amazing detailed people around us. Like I've got Kevin Wallenbach, Wally on the call here, and he is the detailed guy. He is so many layers deeper than I am. And I had to embrace that as well, right? We have to get out of the way and we have to allow people like that to do what they're amazing at.
Okay,
So
we're gonna
over the
record
years,
that.
I've seen you
We're gonna record that
transform.
right now. Can you say that one more time? I mean, it is being recorded, but can you say it again that you had to get out of the way and you had to.
I know I do have to say it for
I'm just
me or
kidding.
for you.
No,
Who is it I'm
I just
saying this
want
for
to.
a
I just
while?
want to hear it again. I
Yeah,
liked it. It was a
it
great.
sounded good. It's like a
It sounded
song to
really
you,
good. I
didn't it?
liked it.
That was really good. That's good. But you do. I'm trying. Listen, I'm working hard
You're
at
doing a
that.
great job, man. You're doing a great job.
But sometimes it raises its ugly head, and we want to get back involved in all the details. But it's true, and our business is running much better now as a result of me staying in my lane, right? And other people in their zone of genius as well. And so we've been, Brett, kind of learning along together along this journey. And you've got an amazing team now. So fair to say you wanted to grow a huge business. You wanted to transform other people's personalities to align with yours. It's like, hey, do it this way, or like, get off the porch. You're not running with me. And so to watch you mature over the years that you've run this very successful business. So what does it look like now when we say, what do you want? You told us you wanted this huge business before. What is it that you think Bret Barnhart and Crystal want today for yourselves and for Barnhart Excavating?
So I don't want to say that I don't want to grow, but I think you got to go back and you got to ask yourself the question: if I say yes to this, what am I saying no to?
Mm.
And you always ask me in coaching sessions, what do you know that you're acting like you don't know? So as I start thinking about this huge growth, because I mean, we could be a huge business, 20 years. We have a team. We have everything that it takes to be a huge business. But if I say yes to that, there's a lot of things I'm going to have to say no to. Cole's 10, Addie's 8. I've got 8 more years with Cole. If he moves out, goes to college,
Sure.
I got 10 years left with Addie. And at the end of that 10 years, if they're, nobody knows, but they're gone, will I be proud of the huge business I built and all the things that I missed? Or will I be proud of the time because I said no to a huge business to spend time with the kids? Now, that's a
What are
challenge.
some of those things? You said there's cost associated with that. So kind of name some of those things. What would be some of the cost associated with that?
Well, somebody'd say, well, just hire people. Okay.
Okay.
Well, that's, I agree with that. But there's changes that happen with people. And if I say I get a CEO, that CEO runs a business for 4 years, we build this huge business, that CEO decides to go, then who has to be the CEO now?
Mm-hmm.
If I can't find somebody immediately, and then who is left to train that guy? And you'd say, well, build systems and processes, but there's things that you can't system and process. So that's going to require time of me. And at the end of the day, what do you know that you're acting like you don't know? Even if I have people running the business, I love what Dave Ramsey says is when your golf game gets better, your business gets worse, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm not in the business and running the business, nobody's going to run that business like I will. There's great people. I'm not talking bad about people, but I'm going to have my hand in the business because I love what I do. So it's still going to require a lot of me, and I'm always looking how to make the business better. So even if I went and got all these people, I'm still going to have my hand in the business because I love it. I've built it. We have built it as a team, but I know I can't discipline myself enough to not be in it all the time and be away from the kids. It's all right. It's still a challenge today to balance that from going home and being fully present to all these things going on in my head, and I'm thinking about things and I'm trying to play with the kids, but I got all these things in the business going on, and there's
That's
just
the
more
part
to
that I
do.
was trying to get to. There's relational cost.
Yeah.
And you're going to miss some things with Crystal and with Cole and with Addie when you build the business a little bit larger. At one time, remember you telling me years ago, you said, I've got a goal. There's a particular amount of money I want to have in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us that story about the day Crystal took a picture of your bank balance and sent it to you. Bring us back to that time.
So when I met Crystal, when we got married, I always said, there's a certain amount of money that I want in the bank, and when I get there, everything will be great. And it was probably 8 to 10 years after we got married. she sends me a picture of the bank account, and she said, "You've always talked about this, and I wanted you to see it." Funny thing is, we paid a bunch of bills the next day, and it all went away.
That's the way
Uh,
it always goes.
yeah,
But you had it in there for a minute.
yeah.
So that was
So
good. Congratulations on accomplishing the goal, first of all.
yeah, and I was out, so we didn't really talk about it. And I get home that night. She said, "You didn't respond to me," and I said, "Yeah." She said, "Aren't you excited?" And I said, "No, I'm not." And she said, "Why?" And I said, and obviously we had just started having kids, so there wasn't a lot I missed there. But I said, "Do you realize how much time I've lost with you to get that,
Mm,
for all those checks to go out tomorrow? And that's gone. And now it's not enough because I want more." So
mm,
I just, it's like guardrails. You just continue to move those guardrails, right? Like
mm,
once I get there, I'm going to plant the guardrail, but then that
mm,
guardrail keeps moving, keeps moving, keeps moving.
mm,
And then at what point does the rail just fall off the cliff and you go with it? So I just told her, I said, I just think of all the Saturdays, all the late nights, all the time that I put, every time we'd go on vacation, I'd have a laptop with me. We'd go out and do something all day, and
mm,
I'd get the laptop out at night. I'd work, and
mm,
I'm not going to sit here and say I don't do that today. We just got back from a trip, and I get up early in the morning and do stuff that I want to do, but then I was doing stuff I had to do because I was chasing that so much, and more money
mm,
and more money and more money. And I just think about all the time that I miss with Crystal, and if something was to happen to Crystal, I couldn't get that time back.
mm.
That was 10 years of time that I lost with my wife.
So you're not saying that you shouldn't be aspirational. You want to grow your business. It's just building it very strategically. It's building it with boundaries. It's prioritizing your priorities. You would probably do the same thing over, but you would do it a little differently, possibly. And I think the real key takeaway here is that you thought that that amount of money in the bank was going to give you happiness. And what you found out over the years is happiness is a choice, not a trait, right? And you can choose to be a sense of contentment where you're at currently, aspirationally continuing to grow. And I've watched your mindset change over time to that, to be like, hey, I'm good. I'm going to build it, but my family's first. I will say, from a coach's perspective, used to you would go on vacation and you would spend the vast majority of your time away on the phone, texting, emails, on the computer. And I've seen that decrease rapidly over the years. Now it's minimal.
Yeah.
And as a business owner, I do the same thing. I've been in business 44 years and I still I'll sneak away sometimes. So Robin's not looking at me and I'll go like, okay, real quick, on the computer. And I'm like, okay, because you still want to maintain, still want to manage, you still want to make sure you got your finger on the pulse. Nobody's going to chastise you for that, but it's not the end all to be all for you anymore. It's not every single time, right? You've really gotten a good grasp on that. Well, listen, let's switch gears for a second. You're a busy guy and you've really prioritized your priorities. You've done a good job, but man, you've got a wife, you've got two active children, and those kids are active. Did I say how active your children are? They are active. They're into everything. They're beautiful kids and they're into martial arts and they're into sewing. They're into all kinds of cool stuff, man. But then you've got Bret Barnhart Excavating, which is a huge team. You're crushing it now. They're in Tulsa. You're president of a board there locally. Happy Hands. I hope it's okay that we give them a plug. We'll give them a shout out here. They're a tremendous organization there in Oklahoma. You're really active in this new local church that you serve in there. You're building a brand new house right now, and I'm envious and I'm a little bit jealous. I'm just going to go ahead and say publicly because I've seen the plans to this. Man, how in the world do you manage all these responsibilities? So share with the audience, because a lot of people listening right now are in the same boat as you, right? They've got kids, wives, businesses. How in the world do you manage all that? How do you keep all the balls in the air?
Um, I don't know if I would say I do it well, but um, the first thing I would say is an open conversation with Crystal, constant conversation with Crystal,
Mm, good
constant
communication.
accountability um, with your guys, like we have in ISI, to hold you accountable to spending that time with your family. And who's going to ask the hard question, right? Like, there's random times you're going to ask me that hard question of how am I spending time with my family. And then the other thing I would say is you got to learn when to say no. As you know, we worked through this, and I was going to build the house myself, and I wanted to save money, and I wanted to do all these things to build it myself. And you kept telling me, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think that's a good idea. And it run right up to the end of the rope. And now somebody else is doing it. Now, I will say I'm helping in the front end of the project, but I'm realizing now what I would have went through if I would have done that entire house, and how much opportunity cost in the business I would have missed by saving a little bit of money on my house. But going back to that, if you don't have somebody that knows you in your life, whether it's your mastermind group, a church group, a mentor, I heard a pastor say it this way one time: life is like a dark hallway, and you're walking this dark hallway and you'd have no idea where you're going. Somebody else has been down that hallway before you. Why don't you let them lead you down that hallway? That's a mentor. That's what I would tell you that you've done in my life. You've been down this path. You see the hallway I'm walking down, and you show me the roadblocks before I get there, right? All the things, all the relationships with my family, all those things. So having that accountability to say, hey, you're doing too much. You need to cut it back. You need to let somebody else do it, because all I see is the money I'm saving, right?
Yeah,
Or
here's this. I got to tell a funny story. I'm going to get in trouble for this, but I'm going to tell it anyway. But it's my show, so I can tell it if I want to. I flew out to Tulsa when Bret was just starting with me, and we get to know each other. And he was driving me all over Tulsa and showing me different projects they were working on. And he said, I want to show you this flip house that I'm thinking about buying. And I said, okay. We drove down this road, and he showed me this house, and he said, it's going to take me about 90 days, and I think I can make about $10,000 on this flip house. And I said, okay, cool. So I didn't say anything. We drove on down the road, and he said, man, we're so busy we can't find people to work, and there's people wanting to build subdivisions, and I got to do the land clearing. And drove by this one this one development. There's a lot of woods, and he said, we just missed that one because I don't have the time to fool with it. And I said, how much could you make on that project? He said, well, it would take about 4 months, and we could probably make about $100,000. And I said, really? He said, yeah, but I don't have the time to fool with it. I said, no, but you got time to fool with a rental house for 3 months. You're going to make $10,000 on? He started laughing. He said, well, I didn't think about it. And that, see, that's the same way with building this house, right? You can go out and sell new jobs and make 3 times the money that you're going to save. We got to stay in our lane.
Yeah.
It's not the how, it's the who. We've got to get the people. We're stepping over dollars, picking up dimes, and we do that each and every day. And it just takes people like in your mastermind. Bret, you've been in a mastermind group meeting now every week for 10 years. Kevin actually is in that group as well. Kevin, feel free to chime in on this. But we've all seen your growth, man. You're a young guy, but you've done so well. You've matured. You've balanced these things well. You're getting a handle on it. You do have the systems and the processes in place to manage all these responsibilities, and you're doing it well. But when you're out of balance, and I've seen you out of balance a number of times. We've all been out of balance. Kevin, you've been out of balance. I've been out of balance, right? We all get out of balance. What do you do to get yourself back? Like, people listening to you right now, and they're saying, man, I don't have time to do anything. And they're saying, I don't have time to be in a mastermind. I don't have time to lead these boards. I don't have time to get involved in my local church because I'm so focused on these other things. What would you say to those people that are out of balance today and how they could get back into balance?
it's okay to say no to certain things. There's opportunities I have every day, and I see it. I get excited about it. And then going back to what I said, if you say yes to this, what are you saying no to? And I would rather say no to it to say yes to the things that matter. I can build my business. When my kids are gone, I can build my business huge. When they're off in college, Crystal probably won't want me home near as much. Just, laughing. But
She'll be down there at college visiting Andy is
she'll
what
be
she'll
down
be
there seeing
doing. I
kids.
know.
Yeah, yeah. So it's okay to say no, and we see all these other people doing all this other stuff, and it's like we got to have this. And our pastor's doing a sermon right now on a spiritual battle, and I think of all the things that maybe the enemy is putting before us to keep us busy. And when we can stay that busy, then we lose our focus on those things that maybe God called us to do. So
Mm.
I would just say it's okay to say no. Do what's best for yourself, and don't live your life for somebody else. Live your life for your family, for yourself,
Mm.
and get some things out of your life and give you time, and give you a place of rest. And it's chasing it. I mean, I like to make money. I'm not going to sit here and say I don't
Sure.
like to
Yeah,
make
we all
money,
do.
but
Yeah.
um, like you always ask me, well, if we go and we make all that money, what are we going to do with it?
Mm.
Well, if my life's not going to change, why chase it? It just comes
Mhm.
with more money. Just doesn't fall in your pocket. You have to work for it, right?
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
and then with family, with the kids, we've made a family rule that there's only a few activities that we will do as a family. And then one thing that we put in place as a family a couple months ago, and I fought Crystal. Uh, I mean, I did not want to do it, and I was tired. I was wore out. We were coming back from a trip, and she said, "I think we need to have a day of rest.
Mm.
We need a Sabbath." And I was fighting it, to be honest, and I just kept saying, "Well, I don't get to do this, and I can't do this, and I can't do this, and I can't do this." And actually, I think it was Kevin's wife, because Crystal and Kevin's wife are really close, and she said, "Why don't you look at the things you get to do?"
Mm.
So now Sundays are a day of rest, and if we can't do it as a family, we don't do it. And I'll be on. It's still hard for me, but I'm starting to find rest. Funny thing is, before we had kids, I used to take naps on Sundays. I haven't taken naps in forever, and I've started taking naps again. And at first, I kind of felt lazy, but now I feel so good, and I go into the week so rested.
Right.
And we're starting to spend time with family outside of us. We kind of laugh and joke. It's like everybody's going to know we're on a Sabbath, um, because we show up at their house to visit, because we do everything as a family, right?
Yeah, they're
So
probably glad that you're doing it.
yeah, and we have a day of rest, and the kids look forward to it. We do
Yeah.
things together as a family, and
So do
what
you
we
really
did.
think you're more productive right through the week? I mean, do you really like Crystal's not listening? Maybe
Yeah,
she won't listen to this interview. Do you think it really matters? Has it really made a difference? Do you think you're more productive as a result of taking that rest?
I think my soul's rested.
Mm.
Because you just go, and here's the thing: all the stuff I wanted to do was mowing grass, trimming trees, working around the house to make my place look good,
Mm.
right? And then I get up Tuesday or Wednesday, and it looks just like it did. The grass grows again.
Mm.
And so then I would ask myself, and you said this a lot, success and significance. So I was successful Sunday, but I wasn't significant.
Mm.
It felt good because I looked at the progress that I made, right? But was that time significant? Here's the thing: I would have been on my tractor mowing by myself. I would have been on the lawnmower mowing by myself. I would have been trimming trees by myself. Maybe the kids out there with me, but we can't have any quality time together.
Sure.
So all these things, and then something breaks, and I get frustrated that day. So now that whole evening, I'm frustrated because of what happened. So then my soul's not rested to go into the week to be a better leader in this business,
Mm.
right? Because of my weekend. So, and then nothing about that day was significant. It was just successful. I just get to drive in my yard and think, oh, wow, the grass looks good. I don't get to think, well, that's another day that I spent an entire day with my family. And we
Yeah, it's
went
pretty
bowling.
cool when your kids will go, Dad, we had fun. We've got these memories. We went and saw Uncle Billy and Aunt Susie, and we hung out and spent time with you. You know, man, you're really prioritizing your priorities well. You're really getting things in a good order. So you're to be commended for that. I want to talk
Hey,
about a
Brett.
couple more topics before we
Hey,
let,
Big
yeah,
A.
Kevin.
Big A,
Yeah,
before
go.
you go on, Brett, I want to break down a little bit
Yeah.
because I think this is really important. You hit on something that I think a lot of us, when we think about a day of rest, whether you call it a Sabbath or whatever you call it, like, I don't think it matters too much, but I think the idea of a day of rest, you hit on this, is what can we do? So like in our family with my wife and I, we decided that for the most part, it was that I wasn't going to accomplish work things and I wasn't going to accumulate. Like I couldn't go out really shopping and buy stuff. And right. Those are like the fundamental don'ts, but we had a bigger list of do's that you mentioned. Growing up, I don't know how you were, but I was this way. My idea of a day of rest or Sabbath was basically sitting around watching football on a Sunday afternoon. Like somehow that was restful. And I'm not fault my parents for that. They did the best they could and whatnot. But the idea of what can you do, share with us, because you mentioned a little bit about going seeing family. Well, someone might say, well, that's not a day of rest. Well, maybe it's not that for you, but for you guys, it is. What are some things that you do that you include, if you don't mind sharing with us, like in your day of rest to kind of help other people think through that?
Yeah. So Sonia, Kevin's wife, helped us with this, and we made a list of what we get to do. So we sat down as a family and said, what do we get to do as a family? Like, what is each one of us? What do we want to do? So some of those include, we did bowling. So we would go to church, go to lunch, and then now in my mind, I don't have anything to go home and do, right? And I get more done on Saturday if I need to get things done than I would anyways, because I knew I had all day Sunday after church. Like I'll be honest, in the past, I was ready to get out of church and then go to dinner and let's get home because I got stuff to get done before Monday. So now back to your question, hiking. We'll go hiking. We're probably going to start biking now that the weather's it's cooled off. It's been hot. We rest. One thing that we're trying to do, we're not doing well at this, is getting rid of electronics. So like the kids can't play their Switches, PlayStations. We don't watch TV. Now we'll go to a movie together if we all want to do that as a family, but we decide as a family what we're going to do to spend time together. And we wouldn't go to a movie every Sunday. But when my mindset shifted, when Sonia told Crystal that, and Crystal said, let's quit looking at what we don't get to do and look at what we get to do. Complete, like so simple. Okay, that's different. What do we get to do that we wouldn't get to do if we didn't make this decision? And in that, I started reading and studying. God rested. He created and everything, and then on the seventh day, he rested. And to be honest with you, I thought I was lazy. I felt like I'm lazy. I got all this stuff to do. I'm being lazy. Well, if that's the truth, then I'm telling God he's lazy. And he wasn't. He rested.
Brett, you know what's pretty cool is your kids are not going to look back and say, man, we had the best looking yard you've ever seen. And you wouldn't believe those bushes. They were manicured. They're going to be like, man, do you remember when we went bowling and hiking and bike riding and we did all these things together? The movies they're going to recount. I'm telling you, man, the dividends are huge. What you're investing in right now, they're going to pay dividends for a lifetime.
Yeah.
And those other things, I promise you, are not. So, man,
Way to go.
Way to go. You know, another area that I hear a lot of young men, especially your age, struggling in is comparison. And just to be honest with you, I've struggled with that over the course of my life. You know, I got a lot of buddies that have done really good, and they got big houses, they got faster cars, they got bigger boats. Many of them have multiple vacation homes. They make more money than me. And to be honest, sometimes it bothers me. Like I wonder if Robin thinks that we should be doing better, or should we have like a nicer house here, or like, can I do something to make more money? Like, and I know a lot of the times as I've aged, that's gotten less, right? But when I was younger, it really bothered me. I'm just curious with you and Crystal, do you struggle with comparison? And if so, how do you deal with it?
I wouldn't say it's a major thing in my life, but I do, because I see other businesses and I see all these things they're doing. And here's what goes off in my mind is I don't want what they have, but am I going to be the leader in technology? Am I going to be the leader in the industry, right? In the construction industry. So, here's what I go back to. My grandpa, which he's gone now, he called me Dauber. That was my nickname. And I worked with him through the hayfield. He had a business, obviously. He's second generation. And I had heard about this other business my whole life. We were driving down the road. I still remember where it was at. I was probably 12 years old. And I said, Grandpa, what about this guy? What do you think about this guy? Because everybody always talked about this guy, kind of in a jealous way, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And Grandpa said, son, when you get through worrying about what you got to do, then you can worry about everybody else. Until then, and the funny thing is, you will never get through worrying about what you got to get done each day
That's
to have time to worry about somebody else.
right.
So when I get in that situation, I just go back to what Grandpa told me, because he just kept his head down and pressed forward. Never heard him say a bad word. And I actually stood up in his funeral and told that story. And I never heard him talk about anybody else. I never heard him compare. He was just head
What a
down,
legacy.
straightforward. And so I look back at that. I do see other businesses, and I see, these guys getting airplanes and lake houses and things like that. To be honest with you, though, when I think about that, and I truly, truly be completely honest with myself. So one of our core values is straightforward communication. So being very straightforward with myself. And I think about all these other things that they have. It just requires time, and it takes time away from them being with their family. None of that stuff's going to matter when they're gone. And when somebody comes to their funeral, I guarantee you not one of them's going to say, wow, if it wasn't for that lake house, wow, if it wasn't for that
That's
jet,
true. Yeah.
wow, if it wasn't for this and that and this and that. But will they remember that I was spending time with them, that I had time for them, because I wasn't dealing with all that? All that stuff requires maintenance. And that's where I have to be completely honest with myself, because I still struggle with it every day. But being completely honest with myself of how much time will it take if I get all these other things, and even
You know,
build
it's
my
funny.
business. Go ahead.
It's funny you're talking about counting the cost. I'm telling on you again. I'm gonna get in real trouble after this interview. But another trip, flew out to Tulsa, spent a few days with Bret, and he and Crystal bought this big, beautiful mobile home. You pull behind the truck. And this thing was gorgeous. And walked by, and I said, "Man, that's pretty cool. I've not seen that before." And he said, yeah, we just bought it about a year ago, and how many times do you use it last year? Well, we didn't get to use it as many times as we'd like. We only got to use it about three long weekends over the course of about 6 or 8 months. And I said, oh, I didn't say anything about it. And I said, where's that new truck come from? Well, I had to buy the truck to pull it. And I said, you did? He said, yes, that's a good looking truck. What did it cost? And he told me. And I said, well, that's pretty cool. So anyway, we visited for 2 or 3 days, got back on the plane. On the way home, I wrote a blog, and the blog was called Count the Cost. And so I did a spreadsheet detailing out exactly what that cost him, and divided it by the number of nights he used it. And it was $1,150 a night to stay at the KOA. I said, I hope you enjoyed your stay. And I'd never told him I wrote it, but he read it off the website and he sold it. I said, well, that's pretty good. He was counting the cost. He was a young man then, and he's understanding that. And what's cool is that you took that and you've overlaid that in every area of your life.
Yeah.
Into the most important areas, and that's your family.
Yeah.
And so now you're still building a very successful business. You're doing it very methodically. You're not doing it at the expense of Cole and Addie and Crystal. And so that's got to feel good. You got to be proud for the way that you're building this business now. So what does the future look like for you, for Bret Barnhart Excavating? Like, what motivates you from this point forward in being successful? And what does successful look like for you, say, over the next 3 to 5 years?
So I'm going to hit a little bit of the early business. Started my business. Initially, it was to make money. And how can I make more money, more money, more money? Went through all of that measurable time. And obviously the money was coming with it. The money wasn't the issue. It was the desire for money. I read a book, and a lot of people ask me what this book is. I can't tell you what the book is. I can't even remember the book, but it was talking about what God's called you to do and where is God calling you. And what I realized was God didn't call me to be a business owner, because God doesn't call us to ourselves. He calls us to others. Well, that desire was for nobody but myself, outside of what Crystal and I give. Okay, so then if God didn't call me to myself and God didn't call me to make more money and build all this for myself and buy all these houses and planes and everything, then what did he call me to do? And what do I have a passion for? What breaks my heart? Um, what I've experienced with you in my life is um, men. What breaks my heart is men not being godly men and doing what God called us to do. So in my business today, obviously I want to make money. I don't want it to be that because I still have a desire to make money, but there's so much more to this business than just making money. And I have relationships with my guys. And I believe that God has called us to use our business to be a tool to reach people. We can be the church inside these businesses, right? So for me, we do a men's breakfast. I have relationships with my guys. I'm very intentional with that. That's if you said why do you get up every morning? It's not to go move dirt or dig ditches. It's to have relationships with men in this business to see life change. So it's hard because you start building a relationship and then a guy leaves. But there's still impact was made in that guy's life through this business. Our business was in the construction industry. There's a lot of um, discussions that you have in business that your wives wouldn't be proud of when you get home, to be honest with you, if you told them the things that you talked about and the things that were said. And I would tell you the first 10 years of our business, we were that business. And if my kids would have watched what happened each day and some of the things I said, I wouldn't be proud of my kids to see that. That's not in our business today. Now, I'm not on every crew, and somebody probably has heard something, but for the most part, you won't hear that kind of stuff going on in this business.
Well, because you're teaching character and integrity and the quality of the people, and you're leveling them up in every area of their life. And that's all through leadership, right? The culture is built from the top down. It's you lead people well, and you're leading people well, and you've changed the entire culture of what they were experiencing before.
Yep.
And so, man, I love to hear your motivation for change men's hearts and help them grow and understand what's important. And that's really exciting. Bret, if you were to offer, you're very familiar with the term full cup.
Yep.
Is there a hack, a tip, a trick, a book? Is there something, some word of encouragement that you would give today as a full cup before we leave the interview? Is there something you'd like to share?
And this is not just because you're on the call. I would get somebody in my life that's going to hold me accountable to live the life that God's created us to live. Get a mentor, get somebody in your life that you can open up fully with, that understands you, that's going to show you things and that has no skin in the game. That's my wife and I talk a lot about when I started working with you and you started coaching me every week. And actually this come up probably a month ago is what would our life look like today if I wouldn't have hired a mentor? And to be honest with you, I probably wouldn't be proud of who I would be today if it wasn't for having a mentor in my life to help walk down that dark hallway, because I probably would have been chasing things that I really wouldn't have been proud of at the end of my life.
Well, I can say, man, what a fine young man you are now, and what an incredible job that you're doing with your family. You're to be commended. So, Bret, if people want to reach out to you, what's the best place to reach you? Do you have a website or an email address or something that if people want to contact you to learn more about Barnhart Excavating and what you're doing, is there a good place to reach you?
Yeah. You can go to our website and send an email into the office and they'll get that to me. And then if you would like, I can send over a link to put in the show notes to schedule a time to just talk with people.
Yeah,
Just
that'd be
have
great. We'll
relationship.
have all that put in the show notes, and we'll be able to get you the ability to reach out to Bret. Kevin, any final thoughts or comments as we wrap up today?
Man, that's awesome, Bret. I thank you so much for sharing all that. There's so many tidbits of different rabbit trails we could have gone down, but I think you guys did a great job sharing what you did, and thank you so much, man. Appreciate you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. This has been great.
Yeah. Bret, thank you, buddy. And thank y'all for listening to View from the Top podcast. We're excited to see you the next round. Have a great day. We'll see you.
Hey guys, as we close this episode out, remember Bret's full cup from today, that he mentions that we want to get accountability with someone that has no skin in the game. And I think that's really important. So pay attention to that. Let's go find that mentor that has no skin in the game for you, that can really help you make a difference. It's a great full cup from Bret today. Hey, if you're interested in learning more about who we are at View from the Top, you can easily track us down by visiting our website at viewfromthetop.com. You can email pod, that's POD, at viewfromthetop.com, or you can DM us. Look us up on Facebook or LinkedIn. Thanks again for listening in today. We'll see y'all next week.